if you have a child that's struggling with behavioral issues, there are multiple reasons that this can happen. And, you know, we're going to kind of dive into this. And what we're going to dive into, the specific aspect of this is, what are the behavioral issues linked with academics? Why do they get them? And what can you do to provide a better outcome for them, to minimize the amount of issues that you're having with behavior due to those academic settings? I'm Dr. Jeff Cumro, and over the past 15 years, I've had the pleasure of working with thousands of people, ultimately helping them to balance out the brain and the body. We want to have function in the hardware, right? But also get the software working as well as possible. We have to get the energetic systems to supply the brain and the body. And when we can get those two together, then we get what we need, right? We have the processor, we have the fuel to move ourselves forward. But if we don't have function in the brain or body, or we don't have the energy to supply those things, it's kind of up in the air, right? We don't know what we're going to get. So let's go ahead and dive into this. And in today's video, we're going to talk about left brain dominance, and we're going to talk about right brain dominance. Now, stereotypically, when we talk about left brain dominance, we talk about hyperactivity. We talk about they're more focused, but they might be very distractible, right? So it ends up being something where they're constantly looking at all these other things because they can't help it. And that's the first thing we're going to dive into, right? So the other side of things, we're going to dive into the right brain dominancy too, and this is where they have trouble to focus on one thing, and both of these lead to personality changes. You're more likely to have certain personality traits with one than the other. You're more likely to have certain learning abilities with one versus the other, and that's ultimately where all of this stems from. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So like I said, first thing we're going to talk about is a left brain dominancy. And in left brain dominancy, we see more academic success in most cases. And it's not necessarily that it's more academic success, they're more academically geared because we have more of a logical brain function on that left brain. So when they have that dominancy there, things like science and math and things like that are a little bit more easy for them. Now, where do they struggle? Looking at big picture thinking. So, they might be great readers, but they might not be able to pick up the big picture of the story. They might not be able to grasp the moral of the story without, further examination. When we have this, we have more social anxiety. So public speaking might be something that gives them difficulty. They might be more prone to getting bullied or different things like that because they're less likely to interact more. They're going to struggle a little bit more with outgoing behaviors, right? They tend to be a little bit more introverted. So the stereotypically left brain dominancy, autism is the stereotypical example, right? What happens in autism? They have great logical drive. They have perfect memory, all of this other stuff, but they struggle to share their thoughts and their interactions with their peers because that is more of a right brain function. They might have overconfidence. So these are things that can all play into the left brain dominancy. And there's more than this, but these are some of the big ones that go into this. So how does this all affect the academic side of things, and how can this go into behavioral issues? Oftentimes, when we're doing homework, right, the homework itself isn't necessarily as big of a problem with left brain people because they tend to be better at it. But it depends on what type of homework it is. Again, if they are reading a book, they're more likely to be able to read the book with no problems. They may have read early. They may be very, very fluent. They may be able to use really, really big words, but they don't see the big picture. They struggle to get the concepts of the story. They struggle to get the moral of the story. They don't do as good looking at the big picture. With this, they can be over-focused on the small details. So they may stress over small things, with the perfectionistic thing. They need to get this small detail or this small detail, and they're not looking at the big picture of what overall is important for them to get the outcome that they want, the grade that they want. They may have social anxiety, so if they have to present in front of their peers, this may be something that gives them a lot of problems. I struggled mightily with this when I was younger. I was very, very shy, and that's what you see more of in left brain dominancy. Now, I am a little bit different in that I am right brain dominant and always have been, I believe. But it's a situation where mine came from the other side, and we'll dive into that a little bit more. These are the people that just don't want to get up in front of people. They don't necessarily want to work in groups. They don't want to talk to other people. They want to do things by themselves because they're comfortable with it. They're good at it, and most of the time they can get it done. But this can hold them back in certain classes, right? Speech, communications, different things like that are a little harder on this. The final area of this is overconfidence. They can be a little bit more, they might not think that they need as much work. And if they don't need as much work, then they might get poorer grades because they're not willing to put in the study time. You see in ADHD, overconfidence is a very, very common link with ADHD. And it's something that, why do all of these things lead to behavioral issues? Anytime that you have any of this stuff and you struggle, you're more likely to get bullied. You're more likely to be embarrassed by it, right? But the overconfidence is something that, if you have that and you go into a test or you go into an exam or not an exam, a quiz, or you go into a paper or anything like that, you might throw it together at the last minute and hand in whatever. You don't edit. You don't do those different things. You're very, very confident in getting this done. And when you don't get the grade you want, what are other things that left brain dominant people struggle with? Anger, impulsivity, and emotionality are things that they struggle with. So these are the things that you might see. You might see them try to dominate somebody. You might see them doing impulsive things where they just don't pay attention. They act like they don't care. Things like that. You might see them get emotional. They might throw a temper tantrum. They might start crying. Different things like that are more common with this type of situation. And the biggest thing that you can do with this is make them look at what the big picture is. So make it fun for them. Make it interesting. How does it apply to their life? When you're looking at like a math type of situation. So one of my friends back in the day had trouble with algebra, right? So make it fun for them. All right, so you have, you need an 8-inch board. You've got 2 extra inches. What are you going to do? Like, how long is your board, right? Or is that's no, that's not even the right way. But if we put this in terms of something that they understand, right? So ultimately, what this would be, obviously, x is 6 because we got to subtract it. You need this long of a board. You've got 2 extra inches on the board. It's currently 8 inches. What do you need to get it down to what it? You need a 6-inch board, right? So that's ultimately what we're looking at. But if we can make it fun for them, if we can make it something that actually applies to the things that they like, and part of this comes to understanding your child, right? And you've got a better knowledge of them than anybody else. And this is part of the reason why schools make it's difficult for teachers to do this. It's difficult to make it an interesting subject for each and every person there. And some people are great at this. Other people struggle with it. It just depends on their own personality, their own experience, how long they've been teaching, and different things like that. But it can be very, very difficult to make each and everything specific to each child. But when you at home can do this, right, you've got a little bit more advantage because you know your child and you can help them look at it in this way. So when they're struggling with these things, these are the things to focus on. Make it something that is applicable to them. And when it's applicable to them, they're more likely to get that hyperactivity out. They're more likely to have the impulsivity out. And they're more likely to be able to zone in and actually learn it and be able to share it, right? So let's look at the opposite side of things. Nope. That's not what I need. I go to a new one. When we look at the opposite side, we've got right brain dominancy. Give me what I need. In right brain dominancy, we tend to see big picture, but we have focused attention issues. They're more outgoing, but they're easily embarrassed. And then the other thing with this is memory tends to not be as good on the right side. So, yeah. Okay, so let's dive into this. When focused attention isn't there, it's hard to pay attention to pretty much anything, right? So math and reading and different things like this tend to be a little bit harder for this type of person. we've got to find ways that we can actually narrow that focus down. Exercise is something that works really, really well. When you get exercise, you get BDNF, you get dopamine, it drives that left brain function. So exercise can be a very good thing, really, for either of these. I mean, if you start doing exercise, it's going to help a left brain child, it's going to help a right brain child. Why on the left brain? Because it's going to help improve metabolism, it's going to help get some of that extra, jitters out where you can actually sit down and focus. It's also going to help the right brain kid because it's going to help get the stimulation of that left brain with that dopamine and whatnot, so they can sit down, they can learn, they can remember, which also goes into this, and then they can also focus on what they need. The other aspect of this that becomes much more a problem is the embarrassment. So the embarrassment is one where we see a lot more trouble with behavioral issues. Kids act like they don't care. This is where you see the class clown, right? They're like, hey, can you read this out loud? And instead of wanting to read, they make jokes and stuff like that. They don't want to actually do this because they're embarrassed. Why? They're the ones that stereotypically have more trouble with reading. They stereotypically have more trouble with math. They stereotypically have trouble with memory. They don't have the problem with going out and talking to somebody. That's not a problem for them. They can go out and do what they need to do socially, and that's good. They usually get along with people really, really well. And usually when you see an anger or temperament in this, it's going to be at home. So usually they're not the ones that are going to act out as much in school unless they are really, really embarrassed. Other things that may play into this, if a child needs glasses, any of these problems are going to give them problems, right? So they may be more likely to avoid speaking publicly because, like I said, if you got a left brain child, they're not going to want to speak out loud because they don't like being the eye, the focus of attention, right? If you have a right brain child, they're not as good at it. But reading problems can stem back to eye problems. So check their eyes first. Make sure that that's not a problem. Make sure that they're actually able to see. Make sure they're actually able to hear. Same type of thing. If they can't hear well, they're unlikely to do what's needed. And with that, they can act out. But in the embarrassment at home, this is where you're going to see, somebody who everybody else says, your kid is awesome. Like, they are so polite, they're so nice, we love having them in the class, and you're like, what kid are you talking about, right? But they're the ones that will throw a fit at home, and it's because they're embarrassed, and they focus so much on not being embarrassed at school that it exhausts them, and so they have nothing left, and sooner or later they're going to act out because of that. And the way that you can improve on this is, like I said, exercise is something that works really, really well for this. But sitting down and focusing and doing the things that are necessary. Eye training, eye tracking training are things that can work with these kids. Again, making it interesting to them is something that you can do. What do they want to do? What do they want to learn more about? Because when they want to learn more about it, they're going to have that focused left brain attention to actually pay more attention to it. What are other things that are going to help with this? Sitting down and actually having a discussion with them about these things, letting them know it's okay to struggle on these things, letting them know it's okay to talk about where they're struggling. Because if they know that it's okay, you hear so many parents that sit down and they're like, well, you're just not working hard enough. And in dyslexia, in ADHD, in different things, it's not that they're not working hard. They can be working their tails off on this, and it just doesn't stick, either because they don't have the focused attention for it, or because they can't remember it. Like, they can read something, and 3 minutes later, it's totally gone. They don't have the memory that other kids do, so they might have to repeat it over and over again. This can be very, very frustrating. If you're already struggling to read, and you have to read something 2 or 3 times, it leads to frustration, right? And if you're frustrated, you're more likely to get the same things. You're more likely to get angry. You're more likely to get exhausted. You're more likely to just act out because you don't want to have to do that. So you do things to avoid having to do that. So, sit down and ask your kid, where are they struggling? Let them know it's okay to be struggling. Let them know that you want to make them better and you want to help them do the things that are needed. And whether that's getting glasses, whether that's getting hearing aids or hearing assistance in some way, whether it's doing the eye tracking training. There are a lot of ways that we can improve upon this, but understanding what your child is struggling with, understanding a little bit more about what your kid's dominancy is, right? Are they somebody who has more of a left brain dominancy? need to be treated a little bit differently than those with a right brain dominancy. Do they have a right brain dominancy? Need to be treated a little bit different than the left brain dominancy. So as we start to bring some of those things together and understand a little bit more of what their propensities are, then we can understand what we need to do to take that next step and lead forward. Now, is this an overall? No. I mean, that's the thing. There are so many different things. When we're talking about the brain, everybody is different, and we need to have an individualized approach to the brain. Because if we don't have that, we don't see the results that we want to see. Everybody has different genes, everybody has different experiences, everybody has different networks that develop in the brain. And with that, the brain is a very complex organ. And when we can target our treatment specifically to what that person needs, that allows us to take that next step more efficiently. It allows us to know a little bit more about what that next step should be. And when we can get that next step correct, then we start layering things on and we start to see that change snowball. And so functional testing is something that is very, very important. Understanding how their eyes are moving, understanding how their balance plays into this, understanding, how they're hearing and their movements and all of those other things can be used to understand their brain patterning, their network, and what type of treatment is needed is a very, very important step to this. If you have any questions, please reach out. I mean, you can either reach out through direct message, through our website, calling, whatever it takes. Ask. I want to help you. There are so many kids that are out there that are dealing with this. And it's frustrating as a parent. I know, we've been there, but there are so many things that can be done, and when we can make that change, it's amazing what you can see with that. So if this video is helpful, please like and subscribe. It is something that gives me good information to understand what you need more of, because if I know what you need more of, I can share more of that. And if I can share more of that, you're going to benefit more from it. So like, subscribe, follow. Give me something that gives me an indication that you're getting benefit from this. As always, I love and appreciate you guys. I know your attention is one of the most valuable things you have. I appreciate you spending some of that with me. Have a great week, and I'll catch you on next week's video.